Mark, thanks very much for joining us today. How you doing?
Not too bad, not too bad. The rain has stopped for a little few minutes, so that'll always help.
Yeah, it's been pretty miserable today, isn't it? I must admit, it's very much feeling like the English winter that was being slightly delayed, isn't it? But yeah,
It's just bringing back Irish weather for me in England, you know.
okay, perfect. Well, look, super excited to sort of have you on the show today.
Thanks for having me.
I think you've got, no worries at all. I think you've got like an amazing kind of background across a number of different companies and like perspective that you can bring onto this kind of topic around sort of business development, GTM, and outbound business development as well as a major topic. You don't know this, Mark, but we had another profile within the market that we recorded an episode. A guy called James Pritchard, is a good guy. He offered some kind of insight from his perspective. So I just thought, let's add another layer to that. Let's get somebody else's perspective and hopefully add some more value to our kind of mutual listeners to the show. So that's kind of what we're doing today. I understand, just before I jump into that, you've been talking about the weather. I think you've been sunning yourself, haven't you, over in Romania or somewhere? Is that right? Looking at your LinkedIn?
I was in Bucharest a week and a half ago, 28 degrees in October, which was nice.
Okay, well, I'd say thanks for bringing the weather back, but obviously that's not the not the case.
I just had to go to Ireland for 2 days there recently this week, and it was actually sunny for the 2 days I was there, so I obviously gave it some sort of trigger.
Yeah, great. What was the meaning for the trip? Was it work or friends or?
A bit of work, see some friends. I worked in Romania years ago. Part of my Oracle career, I was 2 years on assignment in Romania. So built up quite a lot of friends and colleagues there over the years.
Yeah, cool. Meant to be a wicked place. I've never been personally, but on the to-do list for sure. Okay, great. Well, look, I mean, more generally speaking, for people that haven't seen this series of episodes before, we kind of created this podcast to kind of bring on industry experts and thought leaders within the MarTech data sort of software space, a space that I've spent best part of 10 years recruiting within. We're looking at kind of pillars of topics, things around sales leadership, things around partnerships, channel alliance, marketing, RevOps, customer success and professional services, and kind of other things in between, and bringing on people that we think can, obviously help other people who are on their career journeys, just uncover little nuggets of information and touch upon stuff that we think could really add value, as I say. So I know we've only really fairly recently met each other, Mark, but
Indeed.
Sincerely see you as somebody that's like absolutely top of the game within this kind of sales development, business development, however you want to frame it, world that we're in. And I think I touched upon it at the top of the call. It's an area that I think is so important at the moment, especially with the market in the place that they are, outbounding, new business being so difficult, that to get it right is a kind of complete force magnifier, right? I know you're sort of on LinkedIn saying open to work. Wherever you land in this next role, I think would be very, very lucky to have you. Drawing upon some of that.
Pretty interesting, exciting in the pipeline next couple of weeks, so I'll be sharing that when I can.
Hot off the press. I'd love to hear it. Well, I'm super excited to hear where that is. But I mean, for the people that don't know you, I mean, you've worked in environments like Oracle, Zora, PatSnap, and Marsis, huge success story in our space, right? Got bought by SAP, and then ROI Hunter more recently. So all of these, having, independently different stories, but, combined values of growth and build and scale. So I'm sure you played a big role in that. Okay. So yeah, I mean, all of that combined, I'm really, really excited to have you on. So thanks very much for joining, as I say. Okay. I guess, Mark, if I was to say a number to you, 11,038, does that mean anything to you?
11,038. It's not jumping at me immediately.
Okay, cool. So I'm not surprised, but that's actually the amount of companies that sit within our ecosystem, MarTech sort of software companies today. Yeah, that number is
I would have
growing.
actually thought it was bigger than that even. There's a chief tech do a marketing chart every single year showing the companies. I use this part of a lot of my presentations when I'm talking to teams.
Yeah, exactly that. And that's the way I look at it. That's where I got the last edition of that number from. So you're bang on. Scott Brinker's involved with that, and crazy scale. But I give
Hmm.
you that number because I'm just trying to sort of set the scene of actually how difficult kind of standing out from the crowd can potentially be. Um, marketing, everybody has good marketing narrative. People are investing money in dollars in online marketing and performance marketing and everything else. But I still think there is a huge opportunity for skilled outbound sales representatives of different levels, right? Just to give you a little bit of context here, it said research shows that 35 to 50% of sales go to the vendor that responds first. That was quite interesting. So it's almost like fastest finger first. On average, it takes 18 calls to actually connect with a buyer. That's somewhat staggering.
It seems like a lot, and again, it's market dependent, but yeah.
Yeah, only 2% of calls result in an appointment.
That sounds about right, yeah. I mean, it depends, I suppose, what they're looking at total calls. Are we talking connected calls? Are we talking you had a conversation? Are we including calls with gatekeepers, etc.?
Yeah, exactly. I think there's definitely some nuances around that data. But I mean, all in all, fairly challenging role, right? That you've been in at the helm of for many years. Yeah. We'll touch upon it within the body of this sort of meeting or whatever or episode. But keeping people focused and motivated, I'm sure, is a big part of your role. Yeah. So like all of that kind of scene setting in mind, like let's get into this, right? For the people that don't know you, you've got an amazing experience. Tell us a little bit about that. Tell us a little bit about your career today. I'm sure people would love to hear.
Yeah. So I actually started out when I left college in a recruitment company. I was in there looking after IT, and that role sort of expanded because it was the early 2000s. Wasn't too many people sort of working really in depth on the computers, so my role expanded to doing payroll and becoming an operations manager. A friend of mine then was working in Oracle, and he said, "Hey, come over here. You'll love it. Good environment. You're interested in tech." And I spent 9 years in Oracle. Oracle and similar companies, they're absolutely fabulous for your development and your skills development because they will take you from where you start to where you want to be. Now, it's in a obviously big global environment, everything's looked after, and you do carve yourself a bit the position. I changed role about 4 times within the time there, moved up to director level. I had teams in a lot of different countries. I did an assignment in Romania for 2 years. So there's lots of opportunities there and lots of training. And one of the big advantages there is you don't just become a manager. You have to actually go through training to become the manager, to become the director, to become the people leader. And those roles all come separately, and you have to train for them. So one of the big advantages and disadvantages I've seen in the last few years in smaller SaaS companies is you start, you progress, you become manager, you become director, you become VP. And that works in some cases. It doesn't work in others because you don't get that sales training, the manager training grounding in there. So Oracle, fabulously helpful for my career. But the good and bad with those companies is that even when my team hit 200% of target, that did not make a dent in Larry Ellison's desk. We were making 9.5 billion, 10 billion a quarter back then. My team doing 200% was 20 million. It made no difference. So I wanted to move to a SaaS company, and I moved to London at the same time, coincidentally. And Zoor was the one that came up. Really exciting company, financial software, subscription billing, right at the top of that industry, really going after the big business. Really exciting product, great people, and they were Series D at the time, so quite established. So I led the sales development and inside sales team there, and it evolves quite fast in these SaaS companies. That moved from inside sales to focus on the sales development side. We expanded the team in Europe, showed the difference between US business development versus UK versus Germany, which is anyone that tries to do all three the same way will learn very fast that doesn't work. You can't do sales the same way in those markets. I spent a year and a half there, and then moved to PatSnap, as you mentioned. So a fabulous guy named Russ, who was a leader on San Francisco, leader of different SaaS companies. He'd worked for lots of startups. This guy, he phoned me once about this job, and I knew within 30 seconds I had to work for this guy. He knew everything. He was charismatic. He knew his business. He knew all about what he wanted. He was building this thing in PatSnap. I joined him over there. Spent a few months. Unfortunately, for business reasons, we kind of restructured after a while. But fabulous contact. I've made some great over the years. Hitachi there for a while, doing a similar job. And then into Emarsys, which was really exciting. I mean, I joined them October 2019 and took over leadership of the sales development team globally. As we all know, something happened in March, which kind of changed the trajectory of how things were working. March 2020. I was in Indianapolis. It's once a month until March, and then suddenly dead in the water. So that presented new challenges for us. But as a business, we really worked hard. And actually, we had our sequence of best quarters ever in the business. And that took us all the way up to SAP getting in contact and the SAP takeover, which quite exciting to be a part of. SAP, it's now SAP Emarsys, of course, and the company continues to grow in strength, and it's fabulous. It would have taken something pretty special for me to move. Or by Hunter came up. Really exciting product in the MarTech space, working with performance marketing, advertising with Meta and Google. And I moved over there and I spent the last year and a half there building a sales team, sales processes. At this stage, obviously, I'm quite au fait with them all, and really helping them build a really strong commercial arm for the business. And that pretty much takes us up to today, where, as I said, due to start something exciting in the next few weeks, a new challenge.
Fantastic, and congratulations again on that, on whatever that new assignment is. So, just to unpack that a little bit, the foundational knowledge from these sort of bigger corporate technology companies, you feel is kind of set you up for success, is what you're saying within later life. Is that fair?
Absolutely, for what I wanted to do, per se. So when I speak to a lot of people that are more junior in sales and sales development or business development, which even those names have changed over the years, it really, you don't need it as much if you want to build a sales career, only sales. If you want to move into leadership management, it really does help to spend some time with those bigger companies, because they really do have that structure there for you. And no matter how we boil it, unfortunately, a startup company, even when they get up to 800,000-900,000 people, they still don't really have the structure to sustain a solid management track. They're in parts of it, and don't get me wrong, we had some amazing L&D teams, and I've worked with some great people over the years, but they don't really get there. I mean, Emarsys got there, and then we got bought by SAP, so that's a whole new universe of L&D. I mean, I was part of the integration team, and you're talking with people that, for say, our software stack. I'm talking about the tools we're using, and they're saying, "Oh yeah, we have 8,000 or 8 million licenses for this." You go, what? I mean, I don't think it's a big financial secret to imagine this, but they told me they had the biggest LinkedIn sales nav contract in the world. And I was going, okay, well, we've got like 150 licenses, so let's talk about that a bit. Get our prices down.
Yeah, amazing. It's funny, actually, from doing a few of these episodes, there is actually there's quite a good thread across the really successful people that I look up to, right, and that I brought on, that have worked within, like, an Oracle or an Adobe or one of those kind of bigger corporates to start with, and then gone into the startup scene. So that's, I mean, in terms of anybody listening that's starting out their career, certainly something to bear in mind. There is huge value in that, even today, I think.
I should add one small point to that, though. There are equally, I know, some amazing people who are currently running some of these companies that have come all the way through the ranks within the company. So it can be done. You just need to be that real extra good to do that, because it's tough. And if you make it there that way, you really are making it well.
Yeah, sure. With those kind of brands on your background and the kind of career trajectory that you took, I'm sure when you lifted your head in these different roles, there was options on the table, right? People were coming after you with some interest and intent. Some of those are wicked companies, but how did you kind of come about them? Why did you choose those businesses? Was there any common threads to why you chose them?
Yeah, for me, it had to be, and I always say this to everyone I'm interviewing and hiring, that you have to be super interested in what the company's doing. You will not be successful. You won't build yourself out if you're not really interested in the product. And I don't mean you have to be a technical expert on everything about it. I mean, it has to be something you go, okay, that's doing something that makes a difference. That's doing something interesting. Like, if you have no interest in finance or talking to accountants, there's no point working for a fintech. You'll be bored out of your mind. mean, subscription billing was exciting, which moved into that area. MarTech is constantly evolving, so it's a really exciting area, and every company needs that. I mean, I couldn't see myself, although I've been approached over the years for roles, I don't know too much about construction. And I'm sure it's a brilliant industry. I know some people working in it, but construction software, I mean, I just don't get, I wouldn't get it. So for me personally, that wouldn't work, even though, to be blunt, I mean, I've been offered salaries and things in those companies where there's great software solutions, but you have to have that bit of extra interest. And I realized that pretty early on that I didn't want to work for any company that didn't have that.
Yeah. Love's maybe a strong word, but if you love what you do, you never work a day in your life, isn't it? They say, right? I'm personally very interested in the space as well, but so I'm one of those rare people that actually, super passionate about it and just love reading about it. I agree. In terms of the demand generation, however you want to cut it, demand gen, outbound business development space in general, changed hugely, I'm sure, since even the Oracle days,
Oh, yeah.
right? With all sorts of stuff going on, right? How have you kind of seen the milestones and seen it kind of change and adapt over the time you've been in it?
I mean, when I started in Oracle, there was still a fax machine at the end of our desks. So we had to get orders in on the fax machine as well. Now, not that you were proactively using it, but you still got orders on that regular enough. So, yeah, I'm not saying I'm that old, but the tech has changed. But even back in those days, sometimes we would literally go into the office. We'd be told to print off a list of people, turn off the computer, and just get on the phone with a pen and a paper. And so don't turn on your computer. You don't need your emails. And that was 2006, 2007, 2008. Emails are important, but the phone was super. It's evolved a bit over the years. I mean, it's getting harder and harder, and then COVID actually made it a lot harder to get people on the phone. I mean, my last 3 roles have all been in retail tech, or tech serving into the retail industry, rather. And the problem there being, where Harrods is, but the head of retail for Harrods doesn't necessarily sit in Harrods' office. They could be sitting in Harrods, they could be sitting at home, they could be sitting anywhere. And 9 times out of 10, the mobile is a personal number, so they won't give it to you. It was hard enough years ago getting through to someone's desk, but now they're off site, it's nearly impossible. So it's made it a big challenge over the years, and the technology has had to evolve with it. LinkedIn has evolved from, and they just reminded me recently that I'm with LinkedIn since 1999 or something ridiculous like this. 16 years actually, whatever it was, so 2000, I guess. But LinkedIn was just a platform then for putting your CV up on, essentially speaking. Now we got voice notes, which I think work quite well. We've got the LinkedIn InMails, which they've always been a challenge. They're one of their longest standing ones. But you've got the voice notes, you can send video messages now. That's had to evolve. The other ways of communicating with people, I mean, you mentioned earlier about having to do, was it 18 calls, you said?
Yeah.
I think it was 18. It was something like that anyway.
Yeah, 18. Yeah, 18, exactly.
I mean, back in when I started in Oracle, it would literally be 18 calls. Literally no two ways about it. These days now, those calls are a combination of voicemails, which have grown in importance, which is rather interesting compared to years ago where we wouldn't have always left voicemails. Then are more important, a combination of voice notes, combination of videos from Loom, etc., LinkedIn messages, actual phone calls, and various other ways. So it's actually had to evolve so much over the years to try and get that one touch. I mean, LinkedIn message is a good example. When I was going into the office, I would check my LinkedIn on the train the way in. I would reply to people. I wouldn't have pick up the phone if they rang me, but they send me a quick message on LinkedIn, I'll reply and schedule a call for later. It's been a big evolution.
Yeah. So I think it's like a lot of noise, isn't there? So everybody's vying for that snippet of attention. That's cool. There's lots of discussion, I guess, in your field and across the space on sort of key metrics and KPIs. Yeah. You personally, how do you set up your teams, and how do you track and report what you deem to be key metrics?
So again, coming from the sort of evolution side, I mean, years ago, when I started in Oracle, we had a target 2 hours, 40 calls a day minimum. It was as simple, broad as that. Now, obviously, that allows for a lot of sort of corruption as to how things are done. I mean, you'd people, I remember one of my guys years ago, he was ringing PCperipherals.com or something like that, their helpline, for an hour and a half, just to cover off the duration bit of it. And 40 calls, I mean, that was dials because it didn't mean much.
Yeah.
So I've never been one really into the micromanagement. The way I've always worked with my teams is I want you to own your desk. If you're not working, you're not working. You're not going to make money. It's as simple as that. As regards metrics, I mean, I tend to start from the end and work backwards. You know, at the end of the day, your main target, your main metric, be that sales, be that appointments, be that completed appointments or just booked appointments, and working back through that for conversations, meetings, and then back into calls and dials. I try not to look at things like dials because, I mean, I could dial 1,000 numbers in the next 3 hours. I can guarantee you that. Easy, done. If you ask me to do it, I'll do it. Can I talk to 100 people in the next 2 hours? I don't control that. I can control the volume of dials I do, but I can't control the number of calls. So I do tend to look at completed calls because the net result of that is they have made more dials. So they are working hard. So I'm looking at things like meaningful calls, or as we call them over the years, or connected calls, the duration in there, and then into how many actual conversations, interactions, and email we're having. So my key metric is really meaningful interactions, be that via email, which we had to evolve in Martis, for example, during COVID. We only counted calls as an actual key metric for the inside sales team / BDR team. I had to evolve that to include email interactions because just it was the nature of the beast. You couldn't get people on the phone anymore. So a two-way email interaction now became something we would count towards a key metric. So that even was an evolution forced by COVID. We had to model it. So they're the key ones I look for in the business development, sales development side. And then it's meetings set and obviously meetings completed and conversion to opportunities. There's side metrics to all that, but they're the key ones really I'm looking at.
Do you find when you're coming into any new company or new role, that's something that you're struggling to try and see eye to eye with leadership, or do you say this is how I do it, this is the playbook? What's that conversation like?
Yeah, it's an interesting one actually, because one of the companies I worked for, and I won't say the name of this company, I went in and the target they had for a rather large business development team was 40 meetings a month. Now, with the best will in the world, 40 meetings is notional. The team were achieving it though, which was interesting. That they're getting like 30 to 40, and that's amazing. But the problem was, it was literally booking meetings. So I called Simon. Hey, Simon, can we have a chat next week? Yeah, sure, whatever. I've now got paid. Done. You don't show up, it drops, etc. So that was really tough conversations in that particular company saying, guys, I want to change the target to 8. I want this 40 gone. I mean, I want 8 actual meetings that can lead to actual opportunities. Now, they can book more meetings than that, but I want 8 converting to opportunities. And I've seen a lot of different ways of companies looking at this over the years. I mean, in Zuora, for instance, we wanted 4 solid opportunities opened by the sales team. Roughly, that meant a conversion rate of 8 booked, really informed meetings. And we used Medic even going back to Zuora days. Oracle had their own thing, but we used Medic back from Zuora. Our president of the company actually was part of the company that came up with Medic. So it was a really important part of our business. So my team were responsible for really driving the eye in Medic. And that was part of how they booked the meetings in there. So different companies have looked at these metrics in different ways. I tend to look at it really from a more pragmatic point of view of what do I actually need. So if I need $1 million in sales and the average sale is 50 grand, I need 20 sales. If I need 20 sales, how many opportunities do I need to open? It's usually about 35-40% in most of the companies I've worked in, because we tend to be quite good on qualification. So that's automatically taking you up to 35 roughly opportunities open. To get that many opportunities, I need probably 70 good meetings. To get 70 good meetings, I probably need 140 booked. So you're pulling it all the way back to there. So it's been quite interesting discussion to some companies, but generally speaking, I've found they need to wind down the expectations because they've just come up with a notional idea that book 20 meetings, that's good. So it's been interesting.
So it's understanding the kind of the broader environment you're working in, the resources at hand, and then reverse engineering those numbers, like pragmatically, to become to a number that actually makes sense, so that you're not allowing any ambiguity from the team to just book these I hear it vanity metrics, right? Where what you're saying is like the guy's calling the talking clock basically to get through, make sure he keeps his job.
Yeah, I think it's getting that happy medium of how much qualification do you want done. I mean, do I want my salesperson taking on something that may be an opportunity or may not be? Do I want, like in Zoar, for instance, we made sure the or the BDRs, SDRs, they had to be more or less handing over a 90% guaranteed opportunity to the salesperson. So they had to do some really solid qualification before they put in the salesperson. In PatSnap, we did it very differently. It was more weighed on the salesperson. All the BDR had to do was find an intro. So it's really about looking at what is that medium that's needed in those particular businesses.
Yeah. Okay, cool. That's great insight there. The in terms of like the ideal customer profile, target audience, yeah. I mean, I guess that marries with what you're saying here. You know, the more touch points you can have, or the more interface you can have with those ideal customer profiles, the better chance you're going to have. But how do you go about identifying that when you join a business?
Yeah, that's, as I moved to sort of up more seniority in roles, this has become more and more an important part of my role, as opposed to being handed, go get this job done. It's, can you come up with the job we need to do and get it done? And this is where it's come in, and especially the last few companies. I mean, in Marcis, we kind of knew our market. I mean, it was set at a very high level strategy. We were going after retail, aerospace, and that's where we won solid business. Moving over to RA Hunter, we had a few different areas, but it's really tightening up that TAM and ICP for a small sales team in a growing company. You want them focusing time. I can have BDRs calling all the retailers in the UK all day and all night, trying to get them, and you just said it could be 18 calls. But if they get one, it's only helpful if they're actually someone we can work with, firstly, that we can make enough money off of, and that there's enough of a business there to sustain our billing. After that, it's a waste of time and a waste of money. So we worked with a few different companies, for instance, in Orway Hunter. We needed some particular semantics to be in our favor for that company to be ICP. So we worked with a tool called SimilarWeb at the time. Well, they're still called SimilarWeb, obviously. We worked with SimilarWeb, and we used a lot of their parameters to come up with an ICP that best fitted us. We couldn't get the whole way down because we need some non-public data really to know that. But we were able to narrow it down sufficiently that we could say to everyone, there's 100 target accounts. And now we're going to be crafting messages that speaks to the companies. Secondly, that speaks to the individuals. So we identified, say, 5 key roles, speaking to those specific individuals, and then that speak to the industry. And that's where all our messaging was crafted around. I didn't want generic messaging. It had to speak to the person, the role, or the company. And again, that's how those nudges come in. I mean, everyone will respond to something. If I send you an email, it might be about your recruitment company. You might sort of whiz past that. If it's for you personally, maybe that's something you'll reply to straight away. Or if it's really specific to your exact role, that might be the one that catches you. But usually one of those 3 is the one that gets the connection.
Okay. So there's a science behind who you're going after, and then you're feeding that through into like very specific people, and then there's the copy you're talking about. Within your teams, who writes the copy? Is it the individual BDRs, or is there templates that you lead with? What's the creative license there?
It really depends on the language and the target markets. Like, for instance, back in Zuora days, there was a big team in demand gen over in the US. So they crafted most of the messaging. And I've shared this very openly in the past, but one of the things that really pushed me to try to do it in EMEA, even within our team, to actually get the team doing it themselves, was we sent a message to a country in the Middle East. And it was framed around Star Wars. In the US, that's fine. UK, that's fine. But it was talking about the battle is lost. You can't do this, you can't do that. And it went to a certain Middle Eastern company or Middle Eastern country, which has been involved in various battles over the years. It wasn't received very well, needless to say. Saying the battle is lost, you can't win. We can help you win the battle. But of course, California hadn't thought of this. So in that case, then I brought it back into my team. Now, I've obviously done it a good bit over the years, so I would work on the structure and let them make it more personal towards themselves. And then we evolved into getting that back to the marketing team. So my ideal work scenario is the marketing team come up with the core, and then the individuals add their bit of personality onto it. Because ultimately, it's the old cliche, people buy from people.
Yeah. I think there's still a huge human element in all of this stuff, like not just BDR, but across our industry. I think there's the danger, isn't it, of just being like almost automated out of having that kind of person-to-person connection. I see it all over LinkedIn at the moment because of all the AI stuff, of course, right?
Little tip for LinkedIn for people there, and this was shown to me by a sales leader from another company in London. And I've done it with my profile, so I've put a little flag, so it's just IE in front of my name on LinkedIn. So if someone sends me a message, it says, "Hey, Mark."
Mm-hmm.
If it's a generic message, it goes, "Hey, Irish flag." So I know straight away if it's just a generic message. Yeah, it's quite common now. I see more people catching on to that, but I know straight away if this is targeted me or not.
Wow, never even thought of that. That's great.
But I guess if my team are trying to contact people, but personalization helps.
Yeah, of course. You touched upon the internal tech stack. Thanks for sharing a bit about SimilarWeb. I didn't know that was a use case, but that's great to hear. That's kind of evolved over the years, just the tech stack in general. Do you have, when you go into businesses, must-haves? And second layer to that question is, does that depend on, if you do, is that dependent on the scale or size or headcount or revenue of the business?
Yeah, very much so. I mean, the must-have these days, and I don't think as many people would argue with you, is LinkedIn Sales Navigator. It's also one of the most expensive ones, but it is what it is. It's evolved so much over the years. After that, it really depends. I mean, I've worked quite well with some of the data solutions in both globally, EMEA and US. I mean, when we in Oracle days, we had Discover.org, which is Zoom Info. It's the same thing now, which is great globally. Not as good in the UK. Cognizant and Apollo, really useful tools in EMEA. Again, none of these are going to be very comprehensive due to GDPR. I mean, I was working in Hitachi when GDPR came out, and we had to shut down all Outbound for 2 days while we decided, could we ever call anyone on our database? Yeah, interpretation of the rules took quite a while. That was a tough time. But Cognizant, Apollo, Lucia have helped over time. Some of them are more mainstream than others. Some of them, I could say, had some interesting conversations, for instance, when we joined SAP about those tools, and they gave us their big business legal interpretation of them. So you have to adapt. But they're quite important. And the other interesting area that's evolved in the last couple of years is the sales engagement tools like Outreach and SalesLoft. In the year before I left Marsis, we implemented Outreach in the business to really try to pull together all those communication we were doing with people to, Salesforce and HubSpot, fabulous tools. But they are CRMs at their heart. But when you're trying to do the sales engagement, it just brings in so many other things you're trying to do. So those tools really helped. But again, you need to be a bit more involved and the budget needs to be bigger for those things. I do see them in smaller companies, but to really get the benefit, you need to be sort of moving up that rank. Even in the Marsis, it was a big purchase for us to move into that. And of course, then we joined SAP, which also uses Outreach, and got part of that. But those tools have really been essential over the years. I mean, for me in retail, BuiltWith, fabulous tool, great. It digs out all the tech in the website, gives you a really comprehensive thing. And interesting one, BuiltWith, it's run, managed, supported by one guy in Australia. And this tool has, I think, 26,000 users globally. And it's one guy.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure he's some help from his family or something, but it's him that replies. Gary replies to all the emails. But that's been we integrated that into our Salesforce back in Marsis. We used it regularly within Orway Hunter. I have no doubt I will probably use it again in this next company as well, because they're involved in the same sort of retail space. But we didn't have those years ago.
Okay, that's really cool. Yeah. I hear. Some of those names. I've never personally used any of them, but like the Outreach and SalesLoft stuff sounds really
great
cool.
Solutions.
If used correctly, as you say. Okay, well, look, I mean, what are we now? 33 minutes in, and I just touched upon it a few minutes ago, but we haven't really covered AI, right? And I think it would be amiss to not. It's everywhere. It's a sprawling topic. It's used in various different use cases, and actually some badly, some very successfully. I've heard and would argue. But there's no doubt that automation at scale is here, and that is affecting, I'm sure, positively or negatively, the teams that you're involved with, strategically or tactically, however you look at it, right? Can you tell us and the listeners a little bit about your viewpoint and how it's kind of influenced and affecting what you're doing?
I mean, there's two angles in this from my point of view. I mean, there's the sort of AI that we've been using for years. Like, I mean, Amarsis, for instance, their platform, it is an intelligence platform. somebody goes onto a website, they get an email saying, "Hey, Simon, you were looking at a map of London. We think a map of Barcelona is going to be really useful for you because this." They know you've bought it before. So there's that sort of thing, which is obviously great because I work for companies that sell that and they still do really well. So that's brilliant. The other side of it, though, is where it gets really complicated. I think it's a really useful tool, and I've seen some interesting implementations of it. But automation at scale is complicated. I think those tools can help you to a certain degree, but they have to be used in conjunction with that personal outreach because, I can set up an automation. I mean, I could probably set up a virtual business development team today here now with 100 virtual business development reps to reply to everything and to a tear down of email addresses off the web. Will I get sales from it? You might get something, but it does take away that sort of personal thing. Now, as it's evolving, I think it will be an interesting area to have to look at. I think it might have a place in the tech stack. So, for instance, a lot of when I see especially, and this goes back to Oracle days even, we get a list of 1,000 people that attended a webinar, or 10,000 people in some cases. Let's follow up with these. And that's a lot of work. I mean, we just say donkey work years ago. I mean, I don't know what we say these days, but it's just a lot of work to do. And I mean, does that need to be done by somebody? Hey, I just want to follow up on the webinar. Did you enjoy it? Do you have any follow-on questions? How much personableness does that require? Not much, to be honest. So there is a place for those tools to really pick it up. But then you need someone to pick it up from that. I mean, if I reply to that email and say, yeah, I really like this topic, I'd love to talk more about it. Do I necessarily, will an automated response, even an informed AI one, will it help? I don't think so, because I'm still trying to buy things. So I think there's a place for it. Who knows what direction it'll evolve into? But do I think it'll replace everything and everybody? Not just yet.
Do you think people are still battling with where people should play, machines or humans, and that's the friction that we're seeing or hearing? Do you think?
The problem is it just doesn't have a clear place yet. I mean, you can spend a lot of time, and you would have to spend a lot of time to get the AI knowing what your stack is and how it works and how your sales team works and the type of structure you want to do and how you want to qualify things. And people just aren't sure yet where to sort of leave that. I mean, I'll be blunt. I don't know where to leave it right at this moment. I mean, for instance, I'm going to this company in next couple of weeks. They work in Polish, German, Slovakian, Czech, different languages. I don't speak all those languages. I have some knowledge of those languages. So if you're asking me to sell to those markets, I'll have to use some AI because I don't have it. But with the team there, I can go up with the core stuff. They can use the core stuff, put it through an AI translator that puts it like DeepGL, that puts it into a conversational version, and they can adapt it then to localize it for the market to make it more responsive for people. So it adds a little bit of value there, but it's not going to replace what we're doing because it can't get those nuances across from English to, say, Slovak. It's not going to be able to do that.
Yeah. That's cool. DeepGL,
really useful tool, actually. I have to make sure I'm saying it right now. Bear with me one second. Let me just look at my computer here. DeepL.
Yeah, it's all good.
Really handy tool there, actually, and I'm using that for the last 6 months. So basically, what it is, you just highlight. It's a plugin for Chrome. You highlight the foreign text, it translates it, but actually puts it into what the person is actually trying to say. So rather than Google Translate, which gives you a very literal translation, it'll actually translate it into what looks like it was written by somebody. So it applies AI and language conversion to the same thing. And it's been hugely helpful for me the last few months. But it's a handy little plugin, actually.
I can imagine. Okay. Yeah, great. Okay. So from your perspective, do you see, if used in the right way, AI being an enabler as opposed to like a risk? Like
It's certainly an enabler, especially as companies are scaling. I mean, it can really help with that. I mean, there's nothing worse than as you're trying to establish a team, trying to get all these things responded to. I mean, when you've defined your TAM, let's say, and you get a list of people to contact, when you've got a junior team that are developing, they really need that extra support because they just haven't got the scale on it yet. They haven't got the... I mean, if I ask you to call 20 CEOs, you only need to learn one message, and then you can make those 20 calls. You don't start the call and go, oh, I've got a CEO on the phone, what do I say? It's fine. But when I'm saying to you, call a CEO, then a CFO, then a CRO, then a CTO, then a founder, then a marketing manager, you need a different talk track for all those people. I need it ready like that. Otherwise, and this is a problem I've seen BDs in the past, they've suddenly got through to the person they're calling and they don't know what to say to them because they weren't prepped for that particular call with that particular person. So I mean, AI can help in these areas.
Yeah.
It's certainly an enabler. I don't think it's there now. And it's really about matching that to the staff and the stack you have to make the most use out of it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Super knowledgeable guy as you are. How do you stay up to date with all the trends and like movers
So
and
back in the
shakers
day,
in
I
the
used to use
States?
the register.co.uk. It's a great website. It's had a slightly humorous approach to IT, but they had all the news in there. These days, it's really a combination of Google Alerts. I read pretty much across the different newspapers and Google News every single morning. You still like the Crunchbase and things like that for the up-to-date news on the tech companies. And it's really just keeping an eye on all those things every single day. I mean, I'm interested in the space, so I tend to know about it. New tech, there's so much new tech coming out, it gets hard. I mean, there was this, I can't even remember what it does now, actually, but in Hitachi, a particularly useful tool is called Crystal Nose. I don't remember what it does now at this point in time, because it wasn't useful after that, but in there it was something we really use a lot of. And you don't hear about these things sometimes. But I tend to keep up with a lot of it because just literally just reading a lot of websites. And so there's a few key websites to look at in the mornings every day.
Yeah.
I have thanks to COVID, I have a New York Times subscription for like £1 a month or something like this, which tends to have a lot of the new tech news as well and a lot of the big developments. But Google News is really the key one for me. Google News alerts are something I say to all the team to set up, like as part of especially business development, sales development. Set up Google News alert for retail plus tech plus marketing, or as the case may be, and leave that running all the time. Then you get that news every single day. You want to know when there's a new CMO appointed to Boots. You want to know when there's a new, they're looking at a new, say, CRM platform. Because if they're looking at a new CRM platform, they're open to rebuilding their tech stack from scratch. And that's a really good time to actually start seeding into those companies.
Those automation triggers, yeah.
Super useful.
Totally get it. Yeah. Okay. Good. Okay. Over your career, you built big teams, yeah. Some from small beginnings, but some obviously inherited, some existing profiles, right? I personally, worked across the sort of sales revenue teams, but SDRs and BDRs have always been one of the hardest for me, being open. I think purely because it's difficult to pattern match experience against, said company or client or prospect, whatever. So I guess what I'm asking here is how do you kind of filter and make sure you're getting the right person in that seat? Have you got like a bit of a playbook that secures the best
normally
people
what I do is,
and
it sounds kind of counterintuitive. As I've moved up in seniority, you kind of sit further back in the recruitment process. But I've found, especially in smaller companies, BDRs, SDRs, junior salespeople, I'd like to get involved first. When I say first, I mean is in a very informal way. So what I do is I request a 10, 15-minute call with the person. And I have a very open, very honest, very direct call with them, their personality, what I'm looking for. Ultimately, I like to see what I expect from my position. Obviously, they won't be reporting to me in a lot of these cases. Sometimes they are. But what I'm expecting, and just to see how they talk, how they converse, what their ambitions are, what do they do in their spare time. Really just a really open 15-minute call. I find that really helps shape, is this person suitable? Then we get into the nitty-gritty. Now, SDRs, BDRs, the big complication there, as you mentioned, is a lot of them are very, very junior in their careers. They don't necessarily have the experience that you can tick a box, tick a box, tick a box. So a lot of it comes down to personality, how they handle the call. I am an advocate for sales simulations, but they have to be adaptable. Like I've seen them used as a regimented tool where someone expects them to close a sale by the end of the call. That doesn't help. If you're interviewing somebody junior, they're not necessarily going to do that. You have to be able to adapt as you go through the call. So, and that only comes with experience, unfortunately. But doing things like that, you can see how do they react. Make it really simple if you want to. Like really boil it down to what they're doing right now. Have a conversation with them type sales, see how they deal with that. But I found from doing those things, I've tended to hire people that really made sense in the long run. I mean, we built a business development academy in Norway Hunter, hired 4 BDs. Every one of them was different. Every one of them brought different skills to the table. We had one that was massively outgoing, confident, one of those real, the person that's out talking to everybody. And we had one guy much quieter, but he just got on with it all day, every day. Hard grafter. You get that combination of team together and you will win. You get 4 people the exact same on the team, you won't. It sounds great, but then you have 4 people ready for the next stage in the career at the same time. And then you have a big problem.
So you take everybody on merits, basically. Are you somebody that tailors? Because I talked to somebody else, and they said they tailor the KPIs and like the metrics around the personality type. Some people are more akin to picking the phone up. Some people are better wordsmiths.
The core metrics will stay the same
well?
because I need something like, we talked a lot in the Marshals, especially this came up, leading and lagging KPIs. And, for BDs and SDRs, etc., the leading KPIs are really important. We need to know they're doing some volume of work. Now, do you tailor that a bit of the individual? It depends on the end results, but yes, you have to. To give you an example, back in actually my recruitment days, we had one of the sales team, and I remember one particular day, it was 10:30 a.m. He wasn't in the office. The boss was going mad. He came into the office. He told her to calm down, sat down at the desk, made one phone call to a candidate, made one phone call to his client. They agreed the contract. He billed 20 grand that day and he went home. And she was happy. He came in and walked out. She went from angry to happy in 5 minutes, or 10 minutes, whatever it was. That's the same guy that got me into Oracle, incidentally, but coincidentally. But yeah, you do adapt them a bit, but you need to have the core metrics there because you do need to know the sustainable work being done in a manner that actually is good for your business and good for your sales.
If only it was that easy.
That would have been 2002 when the IT was just ridiculous. Yeah. I remember Paul would phone his client, Delphi, the technologies at the time. He'd phone them up. I have a such and such developer. Yeah, absolutely done.
Yeah.
The interview took 30 seconds.
Happy days. Yeah. Brilliant. So, okay, cool. The in terms of like identifying, attracting, and retaining these people in your business, tell us a little bit about that. Like, how have you had any previous success with any of those?
I've always maintained I'm very direct, very honest manager with my teams and people below me in the company, and I try to be open with them on everything I can communicate to them. So even that comes back to the hiring process. I'm very direct and honest what I expect and what I want, and I do ask them what do they want to do next, because my message I give everyone I've hired over the years and interviewed is I'm hiring you for this job and your next job. I'm not just hiring you to come in and be a BD. I'm hiring you for BD, and what is it? Is it sales? Is it team lead? Is it management? What is it next? I want to prep you for that too. So I'm taking you for the next probably 4 years of your career, not just a 6-month job. Is that what you're interested in? Do you want to develop? And that's really been important for me, establishing is that what they're interested in, to getting a good team together. Because if they are, then they're vested in the right thing for the company and for them. You join those together and you're going to build a successful team. But that's been one of my key ones over the years.
I think from where I'm sat as well, but I don't think some people are genuinely, I won't name any names, but like sincere in that more mid to long term vision for these people. And like people can smell that a mile off, I think, when they, I get connected to BDRs all the time that are smashing their number, that have nowhere to go, and I think that's a big challenge, and companies are losing out on great prospective AEs because they don't have that path that should literally be as black and white as you say. Like, the expectations of this, if you hit X, you get Y. There seems to be kind of blockers coming out from places that weren't like set out when people agreed to join the business. So that's a great kind of perspective. Do you literally have like, is it almost on like revenue or meetings booked or criteria like that?
Yeah, so generally it's been around making
that?
sure they achieve the target over a consistent number of months. So if they're achieving the target over a consistent number of months, and then they're we move them into learning more of how we do qualification for the deals. So I tend to push more of the qualification back towards the BD. Now, again, it's the high level qualification. I don't expect them to understand everything. Like I mentioned earlier, for instance, the I in medic. So the pain, what's behind really putting them in front of their sales team. So I get them to look more into excuse me, the person they're talking to. Are they a champion? Are they an economic buyer? And I don't expect them to know it. I want them to put forward an idea and say, yeah, this person actually, I've talked a bit about them. They're someone that's going to pull this through the business, or they're someone that's going to pay for this, or they've got the budget, they've got the process, they're in charge of it, they've already told me what it is. So try to add more ownership back into it. The idea being then to get to the end of 12, 18 months, depending on the person, that they're actually somebody that can move into a sales job, because they won't have the closing experience. But if they can get the right deals at the right time with the right qualification, it does mean they're easing more into focusing on that closing position. What I don't want to do is have a BD transition to a sales team who can't really take that through qualification stages, because then they've too much to learn too fast. And like in the case of a Marsis, our average deal size is quite big. And you're going from a BD position to a sales position, that's a huge jump. So we had to build a whole smoothing process around that to get people through it. That's not easy. Mm-hmm.
Stressful as well, if they don't feel equipped, and it's it's risk, it's critical risk on deals, isn't it? If they get a bad client experience, you're putting those in jeopardy. So yeah, I understand. Onboarding junior staff, right? COVID, remote working, hybrid working, office-based working, which I don't necessarily see working, but 5 days a week. But how have you kind of structured that, and how do you keep people engaged, motivated, upskilled in that kind of
that's been a real challenge the last couple of
setting?
years. I mean, whether it's a small or big company, I mean, generally speaking, over the years, I would have always preferred, especially BD or SDR team, to be in the office, sitting around the desks, learning from each other, banging ideas off each other, and having fun, because it's a junior role at the end of the day. You're not getting paid huge bucks. The salespeople are walking by you, and they're making 3-4 times what you're making, or more in some cases. So motivation was helped with having people there. Last couple of years, it's got more of a challenge. I mean, the way we've actually tried to work with that is having more team interactions. We're in a bit more gamification, not the whole way down the road like years ago, InsideSales.com, etc. Were real these big gamification tools. Not really going down that whole road. They're great tools, by the way, but I've generally worked with smaller teams the last couple of years. But trying to add that more side value into the role, because at the end of the day, you're going to make commission. You're going to make money. It's not just about your sales commission at the end of the day. You need to put these extra things in there. So the person that makes the most dials during the day, the person that has the most good conversations, the person that books the most meetings, the person that is logged in for the most hours, as the case may be. And that's been really the way to do it. But again, the big part of it is coming back to that whole honesty with each other. Like the old cliche of I did this a year ago with the team in Norway Hunter. Got the sales guys, junior sales guys all stand up, and so the guy beside you is, what's their job, developer, whatever they are. Their job depends on you. You do your job, you're helping keep them in a job, and just getting that whole ownership thing in. So a crucial thing for me with especially junior salespeople is ownership. I don't want them in the team if they're not going to feel like they're part of something big. Because traditionally, it's been a case of the inside sales, business development sit here, the sales sit there, and they feed them, and that's their interactions. I want them to be codependent and to own that. That helps with career development. It helps with opportunity development. Excuse me. It helps with actually motivation in the team. I mean, when in Zoar, one of the first problems we had was, for instance, the business development team were booking a lot of really good meetings, but the opportunities weren't closing as fast, which meant they're on 150% of their number, they're on 50% of their number. And that doesn't work in any business. You need that codependentship to make sure we're getting the right things through. In that case, I mean, you had to adapt the type of opportunities you're putting through. And again, this comes down to the qualification. What are they qualifying? Qualify harder, then these guys get a steady run of 2-to-1 pipeline, 3-to-1 pipeline. I mean, the stats I've heard the last couple of years, we've been told, oh, you should have a 4x pipeline in SaaS. 4x is fabulous. That's huge. But you probably don't have enough salespeople in a lot of cases. If you have to burn 75% of your pipeline, to me, that's a problem. So, yeah, it's a challenge.
Yeah, okay. Okay, and look, for any new, you touched upon it there a little bit about career development, which is important for people listening and obviously everybody independently. For somebody that's made the transition from SDR, IC into manager or player coach, mentor, whatever you want to cut it up, is there any kind of advice that you would give them on how to set that up, or
Yeah,
just
I mean, the
maybe
first
ways
tip,
and
and it's going to
means of
sound like, I
working?
mean, just me trying to get more out of them, is you have to be the guy that's there doing the most calls, that's doing the most activity, that's being consistent with your CRM. I mean, every company I've ever gone into, and this is going back to Oracle days, CRM is never filled in 100% accurately, especially for salespeople. And I include everyone in that umbrella of salespeople, sales BDs, etc. But you have to be that person that's doing things as much right as you can. If you want to move to that next level, especially leader, manager, tick the right boxes, get the right results, and that's how you'll get there. If you're not willing to do it, you won't be willing to get driving for other people. And they need to see you doing it, because to get people to do it, it needs to look like it works. So, I mean, I'm not going to spend all day doing admin if I can't say, oh, that guy's getting really successful results and he's doing his admin. Maybe there's a link.
Yeah, no, I agree. Lead from the front. Yeah, totally. And then conversely on that, which is probably a little bit more of the more trodden path, moving from an IC into an AE. I mean, you talked about qualification and just making sure that gap isn't too far, but like, how else would you sort of
Yeah, and
recommend
that,
people
that really comes
upskill
down a
and
lot
like
to
keep kind
how
of,
your team is
sharpen the
set up. I
sword?
mean, are you 3-to-1 BDs to sales reps, 2-to-1, or even 1-to-2, 1-to-3, depending on the size of the company? So one important thing for me is really that review of those meetings they book, or the opportunities they book, as the case may be. Making sure there's a real two-way conversation between the reps. And those conversations, I expect the sales reps and obviously the team to get more heavily involved in how the communication works as they progress in their job. So, for instance, by the end of 12 months, I'm expecting the BD to really owning that meeting or that opportunity at first stage. And I want them to only hand over ownership when they've literally covered as much as they can. So it's that sort of key relationship there is huge. Like making sure the sales BD that they're really working well together. Combine that with obviously getting the right results and showing the right behaviors and develop them along the qualification methodology. Again, Medic's a good one because I'm not trying to say there's only Medic, there's lots of others. I mean, I've trained on Sandler and Infomentis, Spin, lots of these over the years. But the good thing about Medic is that you can sort of subdivide it and assign it to different people. So really trying to get them understanding, like, why are the metrics important in a business? Why is the economic buyer? What's the difference with them and the champion? And really emphasizing them to recognize these things. And the last two sort of transition plans I've built have really revolved around those. But the key to that, to making that success, is the working between the team, the sales and the BD. If they don't work together continuously, you won't get a good transition. And ultimately, your best AEs are going to come from those guys. Because in theory, you're bringing in a guy into your sales team who can fully qualify a sales opportunity for you. I mean, that's magic. And that takes so much stuff that gets half the battle out of the way. Because I can help somebody close something. I've done it for years. You have a good opportunity. You've asked the right questions. I get involved in an opportunity, say you had today. If you had an opportunity with a company today, if you just need to get it closed and sort of do the final bits, I can help you in that without knowing anything about the previous bit. What I can't do, though, is come in today and qualify an opportunity for you because I don't know your business. I don't know the nuances of it. So if you're bringing that skill from BD into your sales team, you can be much more successful. But you have to manage it really closely.
More around the kind of learning and development side. So there's lots of communities, podcasts like this, and hundreds of others, right? And books that probably are tailored to a lot of the stuff we talked about. Are there any things that you would point any kind of people you're mentoring to, and why? Would be great to hear.
Yeah, I mean they're more really for the salesperson than the BDs, SDRs. I mean, BD SDRs, I'd advise just keep an eye on all the blogs. I mean, keep an eye on all the people. There's a lot of great speakers. I mean, one of the guys I would follow and encourage him to follow is Morgan. God, his second name's gone out of my head now. I will have to share it with in the comments on this. But there's a number of guys I follow on LinkedIn that they would constantly be coming out with content that's really super relevant. So LinkedIn is a really key resource for BD's SDRs. Moving into sales, I mean, there's some books out there on different methodologies that I find are really useful. That don't necessarily mean you have to use them. I mean, for instance, one being challenger sales. Challenger sales, as a theory, is really useful for any salesperson to read and for BDs to read because it gives you an idea of how that thing functions in the background. Now, I'm not necessarily saying that a BD should adopt a challenger sales methodology that's going to work for them in a BD role such as SDR role, but the ideas behind it are really solid in that. But really, for BD's SDRs, I say LinkedIn is a huge resource, so keep an eye there. And just make sure you're actually reading up on everything that comes up because there is so much useful content there comes up. From John Barrows is another one that comes up all the time. Morgan Ingram, actually, is his name. Sorry.
Okay.
Morgan Ingram's a great resource if you want to follow him in the US. He's been championing SDRs, BDRs for years. He comes out with really great content. He runs regular videos online, and I don't tend to stick with one podcast really. I mean, because I'm so active on LinkedIn, I tend to see a lot of them come up, and I kind of try to keep my knowledge spread out on that regard. There's like back in Oracle, we had to facilitatively use Sandler, for instance, in our sales methodology, which meant every call had a real structure. And I remember years ago interviewing a guy, and he was plainly using Sandler with me on the interview. And I said to him, "Oh, I see. Notice you use Sandler methodology." No, I don't. And he was literally step by step taking me through Sandler. And one of the key learnings in that was, no matter what your way you have of doing things, you can't do it rote. You have to adapt it. And, that sort of made me sort of go down the road of reading a lot of different things and just keeping it very broad, to be honest. So there's no one specific one I recommend. But I said, if you're an SDR, following Morgan Ingram, John Barrows are great resources.
Yeah. The challenger sale, is that Kaplan and McMahon? Is that?
Yeah, it's really interesting. And when you start reading through the different personality profiles in it, you start going, okay, that's interesting because it's one of the key things for BDs or for sales, and you can relate really fast to your own life, how you buy things. If the person if you're going to buy a television, for instance, if they start challenging you on that, trying to sort of, yeah, but do you really need this? Do you want this? Do you have to have that? Do you have to have that? And you start, I mean, I'm really oversimplifying to be blunt here, obviously. If you start having to justify that to yourself, you're now an engaged sales prospect. And they're winning. And that's really important. That's really how we get in there. But again, it's all related to the sort of understanding who you're selling to. If I can get into a conversation with you and make you understand the pain you have, and again, this is now Sandler going into the pain funnel, what have you tried to do about that? Have you given up trying? To what steps have you taken? And would you be interested in trying something else? And really trying to understand what's behind that, it really gets you into that sales conversation.
Yeah. On Kaplan and McMahon, because I follow them a little bit, obviously the old PTC days and all that world.
Well, PTC.
Yeah. I find all that fascinating. It's something I actually look for in backgrounds of people. If they've kind of been in those sort of environments. But they've got a podcast themselves called The Revenue Builders. You may not know that, but that's pretty cool actually. They're obviously, given the people that they are, they get some amazing guests on the show. So if you have some time, maybe check that out as well.
PTC is a really interesting one, actually. Mark Diwan, he was our president in Zora when I was there. He was ex-PTC, and he's the guy who brought Medic into the company. So Medic was quite heavily implemented there and integrated with Salesforce, which meant it was a really important part of the whole sales process. From the second the opportunity was opened, Medic was there. And he would literally go through on the sales calls, and I would use it then on the BD calls, inside sales, like what level of qualification had you done? And it would get a green, orange, or red. He would not let someone close a sales opportunity unless Medic was green across the board. And I've since implemented that in different companies to actually get the benefit out of it over the last couple of years. Even in HubSpot, in my last role, we implemented Medic, we implemented a dashboard, we had a very functional way of reviewing it, be it BD side or sales side. And it really helped again with that career development because they're focus points that you can learn something off every single time.
Yeah. Falls back to that accountability, I think you talked about, Mark, isn't it? And being, using this kind of the framework and the science. Hey, look, that was amazing. Thank you so much for all of that, like great insight and information, like some tech I haven't even heard of. So, that's great. And I think as I said before, wherever you land, I think taking some of that stuff in and building the teams that I'm sure you will, it's going to be very, very exciting next 6, 12, 24 months. So
I hope so.
Hey, yeah, I'm sure it will be. I'm looking forward to seeing that grow. So just a little bit of fun, right? Quick fire questions just to finish this off here, because I said I was going to keep within the hour, and I failed miserably. So
my fault with the headset too.
Well, okay. Well, you could take maybe 20 seconds out there, but yeah. Hey, look. So first, if you can just answer the first things that come to your head, yeah. Favorite piece of tech or app you're using now?
Oh, it's going to still be my Pixel 7 Pro.
Okay.
I love the pictures it takes. I love the adaptation it gets in the translation apps. Everything. I use it for everything all the time.
Okay. Cool. iOS or Android?
Oh God, Android. Every day of the week.
Okay. Night at the disco or night at the restaurant?
There's less nights at the disco these days, but I still do enjoy a night at the disco. But one thing it's not as trendy anymore is having the few drinks beforehand, which I still do enjoy.
Great stuff. Favorite food?
Mexican or Indian? Indian. I'll go for Indian, actually.
Okay, cool. Favorite movie?
Actually, recently saw Oppenheimer in the IMAX in town. It was, even calling it a movie is an understatement. It's an absolute experience. But Blazing Saddles would be one of my favorites of all time. But that's, again, it's not so popular these days.
Yeah, okay. Favorite place that you visited on holiday or just visited in general?
Let's see. I think Bali was one that surprised me the most. Okay. I'm not really a beach person, and I thought I wouldn't enjoy it. But just the country, the people, and the beach is fabulous. Nothing quite like having a tiny barbecue on a table beside you with chicken satay cooking on it for like £2. And actually being chicken as well, which was something I was not expecting for £2.
Yeah, lovely. Okay. What's your guilty pleasure?
Belgian beer and my PS4 sometimes.
Good.
I'm a big fan of Duvel beer. I went to the brewery there drove over there about 4 months back. Came back with a few crates.
Okay, cool. If you had one superpower, what would it be and why?
To be able to travel anywhere at any stage, because I love travel. Luckily, I've traveled a lot for work over the years. Been to a lot of interesting countries, and in my spare time, I do try to travel as much as possible. So to be able to be another country instantly would be amazing.
Yeah, okay, cool. Look, health and safety, but God forbid, right? The house is burning down. Okay, you've got one personal item that you can save. What is it and why?
It's going to be my phone. I mean, out of necessity and out of need on both sides.
Yeah, okay. It's attached to the end of my arm as well. I know. Yeah. I understand. Okay, Mark, look, brilliant stuff. Thanks for being such a great sport. As I say, appreciate the time as always. Good luck with the start of the new role. If people want to get in touch with you after listening to the episode today, what's the kind of the best way to do that?
It's going to be LinkedIn. Just make sure you don't use automation for the name, otherwise it'll be hi IE.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Thanks, Mark. All the best. Thank you for joining.
No problem, Simon. Happy to answer any questions. Thanks, guys.